Hey, I'm Mad Static, and before I start talking about Okami, I first want to talk about some other good games that I like first, like Sonic. Think about this game for a second, like the good ones at least. Think about why you're playing them. I'm hoping it's not for the story of a hedgehog jumping on an obese man. Something might be wrong with you in that case. No, you're probably playing for the gameplay, the satisfying rush of speeding through levels, collecting rings, finding secrets, and just having fun. Also, really quickly, look at how pretty this game is. The brightly lit backgrounds, the charming pixel aesthetic, and that soundtrack. You know it's about. Anyways, on the opposite side, you have The Witcher 3, which at least I'm not playing for the actual gameplay. It's not exactly bad. It just feels like the movement and combat from like an early 2000s PC game. I couldn't get into this game for the longest time because of this, but the story, man, the dialogue and the stories and the people, it's so good, it tricks me into liking that part. Also, again, look at the game, look at the clouds, the nature, the gore when I split this guy in two, all of it is equally beautiful. While games should strive to be balanced with all of its assets and functions, depending on which ones they have, some games have like parts that outshine the rest and leave them especially renowned for a specific thing. Whenever you hear people talk about The Last of Us, it's mostly for the story, not the gameplay. No one talks about Resident Evil and how stupid the people sound sometimes. No, they talk about how fun and tight the gameplay and shooting is, and that weird, scared, but not really atmosphere the game builds up. Okami does this, except instead of story or gameplay, it does this for the looks. Most games don't really use their aesthetic as the main drive, it's mostly there to just look pretty and add depth to the overall atmosphere and leave a good first impression, but Okami's style is the backbone for the whole rest of the game. As much as I'm going on about looks, I don't really need to talk about how good this game looks, man. Like, it kind of speaks for itself, and if you can't hear it, I am deeply sorry. I can't imagine the pain of being blind, or deaf. The entire game is in the vein of a painting with vibrant watercolors, with the setting and the themes of ancient Japan and its folklore. I don't know anything about Japanese culture, like outside of World War II or anime. That being said, I recognize a lot of these names from Naruto, so I know a little something. Anyways, the story follows Amaterasu, which I thought was a fire, but is actually a god wolf, and her pervy bug friend sidekick Isun, whatever, as they try to free the land from darkness and evil. It's a pretty solid story that's supported by its visuals. Pretty solid. One thing I do have a problem with though, the comic relief can be like kinda weak. It's kinda cringe and shit how much they sexualize people. Like, it's nothing offensive or nothing I'm not used to as a before mentioned anime fan, but if you're not, just be prepared for a lot of jokes that don't really land. Talking about the story also leads me to something else. So Okami isn't the only game that focuses on its looks like this. You got games like Abzu and Journey that are like spectacles for the eye, but the thing is with those games, they're usually like 2 to 3 hours of blissfulness, visual perfection. Okami is over 30 hours long. This isn't a complaint, it's just a notice. I say over 30 hours because that's where I'm at right now. I have no idea how long this stretches, though that could be my fault, because exploring this world and talking to its characters is entrapping and is what keeps me coming back. The main joy of this game is going through the world, talking to its people, discovering secrets and restoring things to their natural state to make the world blossom. I've heard this aspect of the game is similar to like most Zelda games, but I've only beat like Breath of the Wild, so I can't say. Even here though, the game's aesthetic comes into play with your paintbrush. You use it to draw shapes and symbols that spawn in tools or powers you've acquired in the game. It's cool drawing things to help me in platforming or puzzles or fighting. The combat is split into a separate function though, where you're trapped into a space with a couple of enemies or a boss. It's alright, I like it, smacking them around and setting them up for a brush technique. It's cool. Originally though, I did have a problem with their game was starting to put in like too many variants of enemies, and like they needed to be taken down in specific ways with like one of your 13 brush powers or whatever. That was until I found out they have a bestiary where they display enemies that you've met and how to kill them. There are actually a lot of collectibles in the game, so if that's something you care about, they're really good at keeping track of this stuff. So that's there. Overall, Okami is just this kind of game that sparks this light of peace in me whenever I play it. There's just this like really tranquil sense to it, even when you're killing shit. It's a pretty great game, that's all I gotta say about it. Thanks for watching.